thank you one for having me. There's a lot we can talk about it. A lot of people like get in their bio, and I'm less. I care less about my bio and more, about what I can help you guys do. And that's where, and if you guys want to know the things that we've done, like, I mean, you guys, a lot of people are down in LA. I've done Rod Stewart's house. I've done the Iron Man house. I've done a few of those ones. But more importantly, what I've been trying to do over the last few years is educate and bridge the gap between the industries, right? So that's where it's like I found that across the nation, most real estate agents were either taught by other real estate agents about pricing or they had to figure it out on their own, right? And those people who taught them had to figure it out on their own too. And in that, it leaves a huge gap because when you guys are looking at, you guys might see 1,000 appraisals, but what I found is that you guys don't know what you're looking at or what you're looking for. And then we start to, then when you rebuttal things, you're rebuttaling things that aren't a part of principal procedure. And so my biggest thing is like, how can I raise a level of awareness? And today we're going to talk about a lot of stuff. I'm going to mostly focus on CMAs, but then I'm going to kind of veer off at the end as we go to, Q&A and talk about other things, right? And it's like, even if you don't remember it all, at least and you're aware that, hey, you know what, this doesn't look right, or oh, you know exactly where to look at an appraisal and whatnot. So I'm going to see if I can share my and then and if you guys have stuff in the chat, Celeste, if you can just monitor the chat, interrupt me at any time. While I have a PowerPoint that we're going to go off of, I'm not a PowerPoint presenter, meaning there's nothing you can do to interrupt me. I mean, it's just they're guides. They're like bumpers at a bowling alley. I'm just passionate about this topic, and I'm passionate about raising the level of awareness. And at the end of the day, it is the great separator, right? And that's so often, especially when the commission conversation came out, and I found that a lot of real estate agents didn't know how to articulate their value. And so those that have that issue sometimes when you want to have that pricing conversation, this isn't about the PowerPoint, but this is going to dig into it. We're going these little things separate you from everybody else that's sitting at the listing table in the presentation. And I guarantee there's no other real estate agents doing what I'm doing and what I'm showing you guys outside of people who have just been in my courses and my classes. But anytime you have that issue with articulating your value, I want you to think back to the people that you help. I mean, we go and we're always, and I'm gonna be super raw too with you guys. We make being a real estate agent or being real estate so sexy, and it's not. It's not most of the time, right? We sit there and say, oh, we show online like listing presentation signed and oh, inspection day. And then we get to like the end, we're popping bottles, champagne, here's the keys. And folks, that's not the real side to real estate. You guys can nod if you tell me if I'm wrong, right? There's a lot of tears, there's a lot of chaos, there's a lot of emotional swings, there's a lot that happens in between. And the goal of even just talking about CMAs a little bit more is to take some of that. Real estate is really emotional and they're going to expend some emotion, but your goal and my goal is to turn you into beyond advisors, but analysts, to where you can shave off some of that emotional stress that they go through. Because at the end of the day, if we set the expectations correctly, we don't have to manage emotions as much, right? And so that's the biggest thing. I want to help you guys kind of dial in into the CMAs because to be raw, the CMAs that you guys have been putting out, they get you maybe 50 yards up the field. And then we have the agents that get to the end of the end zone. It's like, oh, list, sold, the highest price or whatever, 40% over list. It's like, was that because you're a phenomenal agent or you just didn't price it correctly? Right. And so we're going to dig into there a little bit. And I'm not picking on appraisers. I'm not picking on agents. I'm not for appraisers or against appraisers. I'm not for agents. I'm not against agents. But what I am for is raising the level of awareness and increasing the public trust that they have in us, because they view us in a certain way and they think we get paid too much, but they have no clue what happens behind the scenes. And that's partly our fault. The real side to real estate, right? We're like, oh, you guys get paid too much. Like, do you guys realize we work 29 hours a day? And then you get to, in some situations where you've been touring around with that one buyer for years only to get to the destination. And now the seller is like, I'm not paying the buyer side commission. Right. So we're going to jump into the CM and see if I can share my screen real quick. Well, I'm the most tech savvy appraiser. I'm not that good with the whole screen sharing thing. So let's make sure, let's see here. So we're going to go over here. Let's see if I can do this correctly. Did I do it? Can you guys see my screen there?
Yeah,
yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. And I know you guys, I don't know if you guys have your phones or in your computers, but the big thing is I'm always putting out tutorials on my Instagram. And just again, raising awareness. Every time we run into a problem inside of appraisal or scenario or pricing situation, I try to make it as simple as possible. Again, to make sure you guys know what you guys are looking at. Like for instance, yesterday I put out a thing for agents that deal with investors. Right, I had a guy that didn't get advised correctly, went to flip a property, built out everything, not to realize that the bottom floor, the ceiling height wasn't high enough to be considered usable square footage. And things like that, like somebody else going forward, that cost them $150,000 to undo that situation and raise the floor and try to get everything situated to where it could be usable. So things like that I put out, things like railroad tracks. Everybody has a situation with railroad tracks. Well, too often I see appraisers making blind adjustments for railroad tracks. Just because it's there doesn't mean that there's an impact on value. Let me zoom into there real quick. If you always ask your seller, how often do the railroad tracks run? In a lot of cases, in LA and in the Bay, the places the railroad tracks have not been used in 5 or 10 years, but an appraiser will see it. Oh, backs up to railroad tracks, and without doing the research, will take an impact and do a negative adjustment. And I'm like, I come in and review the file, and I'm like, well, they can't see it, they can't feel it, they can't hear it. So what was the adjustment for? And if you actually the appraiser would have researched, they would have understood that they're going to be putting a bike trail along where the railroad tracks were. And those are things that I want you guys to make sure, that's why I try to raise your level of awareness of like, hey, even if there is railroad tracks, is it passenger train? Is it freight train? Right? Those are different. The sound, how many times does it run? If, just like if you have a feeder street, hey, having a street that just has cars that pass up one or two an hour versus one that has double lines in the middle, they're not created equal. And those right there, and that's what I share on Instagram, is like those little details can make or break a deal. So let's jump into the CMAs, right? And one of my key things that I say all the time in my speech patterns, like, you guys don't pay me to guess, you guys pay me to get it right. And so I want to help you guys get closer to the market. At the end of the day, the market is the market is the market. The market will always tell us how good we are, but I just want to get you guys to the 10-yard line instead of sitting at the 50-yard line and then having to do panic price drops or having your credibility decline with the seller because you didn't set the expectations correctly. Okay, so let's jump into here. And if you guys have any questions about this, like I said, message me on Instagram. Okay. Now everybody's seen this, right? We've seen a regular CMA. We're not okay. And what we see here, right, is the basic CMA. We've got some listings up here. We've got our pending right there. We've got some sales. Now, what I see often is like if we have the high, the average is 1.308 and the low is 1.215 and the high is 1.390. In most cases, a real estate agent is going to navigate around the 1.3 mark. Or if they're trying to, sell the listing and hype the listing, they'll say, I can get you as much as 1.390. Right. And so they set the expectations right there. And for me, I want to kind of help you guys see that without some critical adjustments, this is extremely misleading. Okay. And let's dive into there. Now, the first place I want you guys to start any type of research that you do, and we do this every single file, every single day, and I've been doing this almost a quarter century, right? And so what this does is what this is a pricing heat map. We always start our research there. We've all heard of the 1 mile radius search, and I challenge everybody on this call right now and everybody who listens to this after to ditch that forever. The 1 mile radius search is historic. It predates all the data we have. And it's extremely misleading. And more importantly, it is very difficult right now to price property. Why include a bunch of stuff that's not relevant? Those of you who door knock, and go around neighborhoods, the neighborhoods. And my first office was down in Santa Ana, right? And the neighborhoods where you're going and you're feeling good. You've got your Louis Vuitton shawl and your suit, your watch is shined, everything. And then those other neighborhoods where you're like, oh, wait, hold on. Did I lock my car? Let me take off my watch. Those happen, and you have multiple situations like that happen inside of a mile. So what this does, and it's there's a company called Top Hat that created this, that I had them put this in as some of my buddies that started that company, but now they've insected this into realtor.com. Realtor.com did not do enough marketing to show you guys where it's at. So if you guys Google it, or not Google an address, but look at an address on realtor.com, you have to scroll down to where it says neighborhoods and schools. And you'll come to this. Now, sometimes if your version doesn't come up with colors, and to kind of zoom into the colors, the lighter the color, the cheaper the area. The darker the color, the higher price the area. right? And so, for instance, if you guys get to on realtor.com and you're looking up, and I challenge you guys to do this even in the neighborhoods that you work in all the time. Too often in real estate, we subscribe to what we know instead of letting the data talk to us and give us insights. So on here, I challenge you guys to look even in your own areas. But right here is like, if it doesn't come up colorful like this, you're going to want to click over to layers. Okay. And then put on the estimate so that you guys can see this. But we can see right here that if we did a 1 mile radius search, we agree that we could get it wrong pretty easily, right? Because we would go over into this area. Let's say our subject is right here. If we did a 1 mile radius search with the lighter color being cheaper and the darker color being more expensive, if we set our price based on comps over here, we got this wrong. We're going to blame the appraiser. But also with the appraiser, right? We want to make sure they know. And this is what I tell my clients to do. I say, you print this map off in color and you take it to the appraisal appointment, because it's the appraiser's job to have geographic competency. But even with that, having something from a 50,000-foot view that helps say, hey, you know what? If you do a 1 mile radius search, let's just imagine our property was in Cameron Hills. Did a 1 mile radius search, Mr. and Mrs. Appraiser. Obviously, I know you already know this, but it's an inferior neighborhood once you cross over that street, right? And the appraiser is going to act like they know, but they're going to have to go back to the office and qualify or disqualify. But at least from a 50,000-foot view, and it's a third party information. And why that is key and important is when, like, for instance, when I go get fitted for a suit, she's picking out the materials and this, that, and the other. And I put the jacket on. What do you think she tells me? Anthony, you look amazing in that suit. That's what she's supposed to say. And as appraisers, we look at as agents as they're always going to embellish whatever the situation is. They're going to tell us, oh yeah, that comp is bad because of this, and that area is better. We have the best street in the neighborhood. And we think of like, hey, we have to prove what you guys sell. And so it's like, for me, I'm like, okay, how do you prove that? And this is how you take that conversation off of yourself and you give it back to, hey, this is what the data says. And then when the appraiser doesn't use that information, you now have true ammunition, not subjective, not your opinion or your feelings of the market. You have third-party information that says, hey, I told the appraiser if they did a 1 mile radius search, they're going to jump into an inferior neighborhood, and they still did. Or we can use this right here where, everybody said, bank trained appraisers, they're appraising based on lending guidelines. And at the end of the day, the lender is not there to value property. They're there to reduce risk. That's why we hear, comps in the last 90 days or 6 months inside of a mile, all this stuff. Well, if you go and like right here, let's just say our property's right here, and we can see how this is a little bit darker. Okay. And then we can see it gets light here on the sundial. Okay. And then over here in Glenmore, it gets a little darker. Well, that tells us a story. That tells us that, hey, our best comparables are not in the middle, we're over here. But you have an appraiser that doesn't understand the subtle differences between the neighborhoods and the pockets. They're going to say, well, the agent, they gave us comps and we didn't use them because they skipped over all the comps right here and went over to a different neighborhood. Well, there's a reason why. And that's why I want to help you guys to get ahead and control the appraisal before you ever get to it. And that's by information. Okay. So we can see this is where we want to start to pick our comps. Okay. Now, what this is, and it's a key problem. And I really want you guys to really lean in on this. The number one reason for over or undervalued property right now, and has been, is time adjustments. What that means, and if you guys have ever heard, yesterday's price is not the same as today's price. And this is what all this litigation has come down, and the cultural bias stuff and everything and stuff. And really what they found out, and I'll put some videos out on this. It's going to be a touchy subject, going to ruffle some feathers. But the overall, what comes in most of these cases, was the appraiser racist? No. One appraiser was good and one appraiser sucked. And then you got to think, if you're the second appraiser coming in, just like if you're the second real estate agent coming in, you know what the other person did wrong, and you're going to be on your P's and Q's. Well, what was happening is all this litigation came down, and Fannie Mae put out a stat that said 80% of the appraisals that are submitted, 80%, folks, lack the time adjustments. What that means is if a comp sold in the winter, say, we're here in April, And we all know if a property sells in November, December, we can easily assume that the market is slower there, right? People don't want to move during Christmas. Once we hit Halloween, everything kind of slows down. Well, if that property sells down here in November and today we're in April and the market has moved up, that means that to use that comparable, I have to appreciate that property as if it's sold today. And that's what agents aren't doing, and that's what appraisers aren't doing. Or if we're say we're doing an appraisal in December and we have a comp from September or August, that means that typically would be selling up here and we have to adjust it down. Okay. And this is the key thing that separates good agents and good appraisers from great agents and great appraisers is being able to adjust for the market. So here's an example. If a property sold in March of Q1 of 2024, the average price per square foot in a controlled data set. So one, I don't like using price per square foot as a speech pattern. However, if you control the data, meaning if all the properties are competitive with the subject, if we have like a 1,200 square foot property, all the comps in the data should be between like 1,000 and 1,400 or 1,300, whatever that number is, right? To kind of bracket that and not just have it running around. So in this situation, the price per square foot was $989. Well, to treat it as if it's sold today, I have to adjust it almost 47%, as you guys can see right here, to treat any sale that happened in March Q1 of 2024 as if it's sold today. This is a key thing. More importantly, we got to make sure that we don't do a year over year or a straight line adjustment here. If we something sold in November, we can see November it jumped up a little bit, right? So properties were selling at $1,249 a square foot. But what is it today, folks? Today it's 1457. So that means we have to appreciate that up 16.65% to treat as if it's sold today. Now, granted, this is the same data that we just said on the last page that we would list that property around 1.31, if we're being crazy or being, aggressive, 1.390. So if we sold in December, the same thing, 22% to treat it as if it's sold today. Now, on that, does anybody have any questions? Does that make sense to everybody? I'm trying to see some heads here. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
So, forgive me for my ignorance, but why are we adjusting them?
Because, yes, so why are we adjusting them is because the market that the comparable property went into escrow is inferior to the market that is today. So you have to, for it to be an accurate comparable, meaning an accurate price indicator, you have to you have to raise it or lower it to whatever happened, whatever the market conditions are today. And if we don't, so let's say if we sat there and all of our comps came from Q1 of 2024, but we're in Q1 of 2025, if we price everything based on this, can you see how we can get that significantly wrong? Because the market has jumped significantly since then. So that's the reason why we have to adjust to show what would, if that property sold in today, what would it sell for, more or less? And that's why we adjust that. Does that answer the question there?
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, okay. Yeah. I was confused because then I would just, all the comps would be the same. I'm bringing the comps up to mine, but it's the likeness. Yeah, I get it.
Well, yeah. I mean, not necessarily bringing yours up to all the comps up to you, but you're bringing all the comps up to what is the market doing today? And then after we adjust those, whether that's positive or negative, to line them up here, now we can say, okay, today, based on these are the best comparables in the market, this is the property would sell for. This
Okay.
also, folks, this also helps you guys create more comps. Every time an agent calls me for a consult, like I can't find any comparables. I'm like, there's always comparables. It's just about adjusting. And that again, when I say lending guidelines aren't valuation models, like for me, when I'm doing like Rod Stewart's house, the best comp didn't sell yesterday. His guest house is 5,000 square feet. Right. And so I've got to go back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years and do this exact adjustment to bring those sales as if they sold at the time I'm doing the appraisal of his property. Right. To show, okay, that comp sold, say 2018, what would it sell for in today's market? And that's where 80% of appraisals are missing and 100% of CMAs are missing. Okay. So let's go. Any more questions on that before we jump to the next one?
A quick question.
Uh-huh.
Uh, how often are you, price per square foot? I think you mentioned kind of qualified. It's you have to control the data. If you
Yes.
can't control the data or don't feel comfortable are there other techniques to get that same, be able to come up with an adjustment that in a more heterogeneous type of home inventory, home stock in a neighborhood where homes seem to vary quite a bit, which is pretty
Mhm,
typical in the areas that I
mhm,
work in?
mhm. Yeah, there's a couple. So we can do price per square foot in a controlled data set. You can also do the average sales price, right? And sometimes, especially, we have to zoom out. If we have an area, and I don't want to nerd out with you statistically and what the range is, but let's just say we have an area that has a bunch of data, we're trading every day. There's multiple properties selling every day. Then we can go down to the month, okay? And per month, we can sit there and adjust. On areas that have a little less data, then we go to the quarter, right? But we can sit there with that sales price. We can look at the median or the average sales price change from quarter to quarter of all properties. Is that as good as zooming into the specific market segment? No, but it's better than doing nothing at all. And it's definitely better than saying, hey, I'm going to take the entire city. Like, we're not appraising the city and you guys aren't selling the city. You have guys right now, which is a big, big key thing. So I didn't finish off there, is because of all the litigation. Now appraisers, which is funny, now appraisers are being required by the banks to make the time adjustments. Little do these guys know that's been in this Fannie Mae selling guidelines. We've been doing this for 17, 18 years. And so that is the part that's surprising, is that the appraisal industry is up in arms. Oh, we got to time adjust this. We got to do. You were supposed to be doing it the whole time, right? And what I want everybody on this call to be careful with when you're looking and reviewing appraisals, first of all, let's be super candid. Most people don't care about the appraisal until it doesn't come in. But when it doesn't come in, we don't, most people don't know where to look, right? But I want you guys to look, as appraisers are forced, because the GSEs have told the appraisers that they can use regional HPI data. That is the most garbage thing that they could possibly do, especially when you have, like, for the example, there was an appraisal that and this is when it came into my view, at an appraisal Moraga, which is a town here outside of Walnut Creek. Okay. The appraiser marked declining on the appraisal report and cited San Francisco regional data. There's nobody in the US that doesn't know about the mass exodus out of San Francisco. That skews all of the information. And I've used in a recent speech, it's like, what can you tell me? What if I'm in Santa Monica, what can the Newport Beach Harbor tell me about the trends in Santa Monica? And so I want you guys to be careful when you're looking at something. And now, granted, if it comes in, most people, hey, we're not going to push it, right? But when it doesn't come in, if the appraiser used year over year stats, straight line, okay, the market is never straight. The adjustments are supposed to be both negative and positive, but the appraiser uses HPI or regional data. Please challenge it. If they get pushback, please call me. I have data. I have offices in Orange County, in San Diego, and LA. I have the data. I will help you guys, because it's just a lazy approach. I can understand what, some of my clients that are in the Midwest. I can understand some of my clients that are in the South. When you're in areas, when you're in rural areas, okay, now it's time to use regional data or zooming all the way out, because you don't have trades. But when we're sitting there at the micro level, at the house level, the region can't tell us anything about the house. So yeah, so you can do price per square foot in a controlled data set. If it's all over the place, but it's a neighborhood that's a pocket, then you can just take all sales prices and look at the median or look at the average, whatever you subscribe to. Okay. And you can sit there and measure and say, okay, if, let's just say 10 months ago, the median price was 1 million and today it's 1.1. That means that's a 10% difference. And it's never a dollar amount that we adjust, folks. It is always a percentage basis. So if that neighborhood moved 10% in the last year, right? Then that means that a comp that sold a year ago, we need to add or subtract 10% to that. So I don't know if that answers your question, but yes, we can definitely go price per square foot. We can go list price. We can go average sales price in that neighborhood, that zip code. But I would not, unless you're just putting out a newsletter for the masses, I would never just use countywide data. I would never use citywide data or townwide data unless it is an extremely rural market. Justin, that answer your question? Oh, here you go. Okay. So the next piece that we miss all the time is the list price to sales price ratio. And this is my goal is just to take you guys from advisors and real estate agents to being analysts. And the key thing is that, just like with stocks, who gets paid more? The person who sees it first or the person that reads it on the news? right? What by the time it's on the news, it's a wrap, right? You've already lost that trend. So list price to sales price ratio, I have found, has been one of the most underutilized indicators in the market. And there's multiple ways we can do this. So we have sometimes when an appraiser will say listings don't matter. It's like, that's interesting. If listings don't matter, then why, when the market is turning down, does Celeste, her underwriters, kick back and say the appraiser needs to provide two listings to support value? Because the listings tell you a story, right? Solds are yesterday's value, pendings are today's value, and actives are tomorrow's value. And so you have appraisers that'll say listings don't matter. And then they also come in and say your purchase price isn't supported because the listings don't support it. It's like, which one is it? Well, here's the thing that they're missing. They have to study the list price to sales price ratio inside of that specific neighborhood. And I advise you agents also, my realtor partners, you should not be consulting a client, whether it's a buyer or a seller, unless you know what the list price to sales price ratio in that neighborhood is. Here's the reason why. If Celeste approves your client for $1 million loan, but the list price to sales price ratio in the neighborhood is 7% over list, why are you showing the $1 million houses, right? They can't compete in any capacity. And then I talked about earlier, now we're wasting and expending their emotional piggy bank because now we've taken them three houses, three of those houses, two of them that, the wife fell in love with, all for you guys to write up these offers and be to fall short because they're not going to be able to compete. So I challenge you to know what the list price sales price ratio is before you go to write an offer or before you show a property. Because then you say, okay, Celeste approved you for 1 million. The area that you want to buy is 7% over list. So we need to take 7% off of that 1 million. And that's your list price range. I hope does that make sense? Anybody have questions on that? Okay. You got to start there. Also, for our buyer side, knowing that list price to sales price ratio helps you write competitive offers. So often we're literally just throwing spaghetti at the wall. Like, oh, they listed, at 1.2. Let's, last comp was at 1.2. Let's write at 1.250. But in that situation, I see agents all the time online say, I keep getting beat out. I wrote multiple offers. We're not winning. It's like, well, you're writing at 4%. And then you guys see here down in the circle, the market is moving at 6.5% over list. So for that agent to be competitive when they write an offer, they have to be at least 6.5% above. As you guys see right here, we got 21 people have paid almost 6.5% over. Now, if you want to go to 7% and be competitive, if you want to go to 7.5%, you can flex there, but don't write at 4 and then complain about getting beat out. Additionally, don't write at 10% over list and then blame the appraiser because it was never the appraiser. It was the fact that the agent didn't study the market. And that also gives you advice for the client and saying, hey, look, the house is listed at 1.2. The market is moving at about 6.5 over list. So we need to write there to be competitive. But if this is the house of your dreams and you want to write at 9 or 10, I will write it for you. But I want to make sure that you have some extra money to cover any gaps we may have in appraisal because we may run into appraisal issues. Okay. And this is also something that this form, which is called and you guys can look for this in the MLS. They have it in every MLS across the US, but it's called the Market Conditions Addendum. And I will send Celeste some links after our call today. And we'll show you one of my videos on Instagram that show you how to produce this in our MLS. But every MLS, it's either called the Market Conditions Report or the Market Conditions Addendum. This right here tells us a story. So it tells us that 6 months ago, the median price was at 1.377. Well, then it jumped to 1.5. So we had a $200,000 jump. But if you guys had the meeting with the clients 4 to 6 months ago, we can see how your pricing and your numbers are completely incorrect based on today's market. And that's what we want to pay attention to. And we put this as a percentage basis. It's never 100, unless it's a true controlled data set like, hey, we got a 1,300 to 1,500 square foot properties, all 4,000, 5,000 square feet. This is the median change. Okay, cool. Now you can use the price. But every other situation, if the market moves 6% over the last 6 months, you want to adjust that. Basically, that's 1% per month. So if a comp sold 4 months ago, it would be 4% higher. If it sold 5 months ago, it would be 5% higher. If it sold 2 months ago, it'd be 2% higher. Okay. Anybody have any questions on that at all? And go, you guys can jump in and interrupt anytime you want. Okay. Probably just checking the screen here. All right. So, and we can see here, we can see inventory levels in this form. We can see inventory levels are, look, they're jumped up, but that is the winter, or not the winter, but the spring. As we've noticed, we've had a huge jump in inventory levels. And the reason why, from what I've seen, is this is the first time in history we have ever had both buyers and sellers waiting for interest rates to drop. We've got buyers that or sellers that have been stuck in these properties or made accidental landlords because, like, why would you give up a 3% for a 7? Right. And in most cases, just like a lot of my clients, they can't afford to buy the same house that they're in. So what happens? But now everybody's like, they're done. And we saw this when we went to the stores, and I use this as an example with my kids. It's like, it's Valentine's Day, but the Easter Bunny is out. That's the same exact thing that's going to be happening with the market. Everybody's rushing to the market. For my friends in my inner circle, I'm like, you guys shouldn't be out partying. Who cares about the boat? Who cares about Cabo? Who cares about this? Right now, we're at the beginning of another 7-year trend, right? 6-year trend. So, and this is a piece of information that you guys can write down. If you study a Case-Shiller report, outside of this last trend that went from January of 2012 to May of 2022, right? The average trend was 5.7 years. If we look at going all the way back 40, 50 years. So when people say, hey, it's a good time to buy, yes, this is the closest to the bottom we're going to get. And all of the indicators are on the wall. We were super, super, super early when we were telling people, buy the house and date the rate and do all this. And that was really uninformed information. And a lot of people got hurt because there were no indicators that supported that. CPI wasn't where it needed to be. Unemployment wasn't where it needed to be. Like, so many people think we want unemployment low. Yes, we don't want anybody to lose their jobs. But if you own real estate or you're in real estate, you want unemployment to go higher right now, because the more people that have jobs, the more people that have money. The more people that have money, the more resilient the inflation CPI will be. Okay. So on this, we can see a bunch of different things. Days on the market. And that's another thing, right, that we don't pay close enough attention to, is not for the county, not for the city, but for the neighborhood or the zip code. You guys should know what the days on the market is. And this is on both sides, right? So as a seller's agent, a listing agent, right? You want to know what the days on the market is, not just based on solds, but pendings and actives also, so that you can set the proper expectations for the client. Let me zoom in there. When the market is shifting down, everybody puts out these little info cards, like this many days in the market, this many pending, this many listings. It's like, it's useless information. Before you guys were in real estate, would you guys agree that you guys didn't even know how to use that information? And when we're talking to the consumer, if they're looking at a specific neighborhood, they have kind of an idea of what the average price is, right? I would challenge you guys to zoom in a little bit more and know exactly what the market has done. Tell the consumer there's enough information out there. There's not enough people tying it together. So what I would do is I would get on the phone with Celeste. Now, we've all heard, hey, I'm waiting for interest rates to drop. Okay, cool. And so you talk to Celeste, whatever neighborhood that you typically work in. Let's say the median price is 2 million, okay, or a million, whatever. Let's say a million. Hey, Celeste, based on the interest rates right now and $1 million loan, or whatever, $800,000 loan, whatever that number is, right? What is the change in monthly payment between 7%, 6.5%, and 6%, or whatever the range is at that time? Call her, get those numbers. And then you can come back to the client and say, hey, you know what? If you're waiting for interest rates to come down, I will be here to help you regardless of when it is. However, as an advisor, it is my ethical duty to let you know how that might affect you, right? And you're not doing a sales pitch, you're not manipulating the situation, but you're giving them enough information to make an informed and educated decision. This is how you use that. Let's just say it was a $3,600 savings a year, right? To wait for the interest rates to come down 0.5%. You can say, hey, you know what? $3,600 a year, I would love to save $3,600 a year myself. What I've got to tell you is, in this neighborhood, we've jumped, as we look down here, folks, from 1.4 to 1.550. So this is how we script that. Hey, you know what? You want to save? I want you to save too. But I have to advise you the fact that this market has jumped $150,000 over the last 12 months. Are you willing to lose that $150,000 in wealth in real estate equity over $3,600 savings. Boom, perspective changes. The same thing that I've done with a client where I'm on a consult call and I'm like, hey, look, because I've had real estate agents that bring me in to take the pricing conversation off of them. And I'm like, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Blank, I'm like, look, I'm not here. My income is not based on the outcome of you buying or selling. But what I can tell you is this neighborhood is moving at a rate of 2.36% per month right now. So if it takes you another 2 months to find a property that is similar to this, that you and your wife have agreed that you love, are you willing to pay at least 5% more for the same property? Boom. It changes and it educates them. Okay. But knowing that, and I want you guys, if you guys are writing stuff down, I want you guys to write this down. Solds, we put out those cards that say this many days in the market. That's based on sold properties. That's historic data. We are analysts, we are advisors. We need to see the market before the consumer. So what that is, instead of looking at solds in a changing market, if the market is shifting down, you look at what the actives are doing for days in the market. Because I have clients where said, hey, Anthony, can you check this property out for me? I feel like I have it listed right, and but we have no bites. I'm like, well, what's marketing time? Oh, it's 20 days in the market. Okay, cool. I pull it up, and I'm like, yes, you're right. It was 20 days in the market for the solds. But when we look at the active properties, they're at 40 days in the market and trending. So that's where you have to set the expectation a little bit different and saying, hey, yes, I know Johnny up the street sold in 20 days, but right now it's taking the market slowed a little bit. It's taking a little bit longer for us to find acceptable buyers, right? The right acceptable offers. So if we don't have an offer in hand by day 40, we'll talk about a price adjustment. The same thing as you guys will see as the market starts to shift this year. Instead of looking at the solds or the actives, I want you to look at the solds compared to the pendings. If the sold properties went into escrow within 15 days, but the pendings are going into escrow in 7, the market is speeding up. And so you get to set the expectation there a little bit different. Okay. Does that make sense for everyone? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see here. And this is just I'll send this to Celeste. There's a link to a video that I showed you how to print that market conditions report. Okay. Now, here's another. So I told you what the number one reason for appraisals being over or undervalued. The number 2 reason is the miscategorizing of the condition rating. Now, let me zoom back out. We have appraisal waivers. That came because of this. Now, back after the last recession, they wanted to mine the data out of appraisals. And it was very hard for them to do that when every appraiser said something different. One guy would say the property was average. Another guy would say the property was superior, good superior, this, that, and the other. There was no consistency. So what they did is they had us put everything in a box. Okay. Now, where this hurts is when, and I love it because now you guys know it's black and white what falls under what condition rating. And an easy way to kind of explain this is there's C1 through C6. A C1 is a brand new property. Nobody's ever lived in it. Okay. A C2 feels brand new. It might be a property that could be 70, 80, 100 years old, but it looks and feels brand new inside and out. We see that a lot in the market where we come in and, Pasadena, Santa Ana, Orange County, wherever, right? And we got a property, we bring it back to life. Now your C3, that is an average property. That's a property that, it could have been a split remodel. It could have been updated or remodeled, 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. Or it could be a situation where we've all seen where you walk in and, the kitchen and the front bathroom are like beautiful and glamorous and sexy because we love the show. And then you get to the master bedroom and they try to make it, they try to justify like, we're just kind of wanting to be like vibey, like, like Miami Vice, like Art Deco. And I'm looking at them like, you just ran out of money. You got shag carpet, orange tile. Yeah, you just ran out of money. So it could be a split of things in there. Okay. So your C1 is brand new. Your C2, that is a renovated property. Your C3 is your average property. Okay. Now you get to a C4. How I always tell people to remember this, there's 2 ways, right? One is like for the ladies on the call, it's like having a 45-year-old guy with abs. Looks amazing for its age. For everybody else, come back to focus. Stop thinking about that guy. Also, we can think of it as your grandfather's house, meticulously maintained. Might have grout still in the kitchen, but the grout is white. The yard is manicured. Every single detail is well taken care of. That's you consider a C4. Looks good for its age. Okay. Now, when we get to a C5, that's a property. And you know, I was kind of use the joke because I started my as I was telling Celeste, I started my company down in Orange County. And you know, I'm glad that I went into business because a lot of my friends they stayed in the party scene a little too hard. And I turned 45 in a couple months. They look 87 right now. They do not look good for their age. Partied a little too hard between, you know, White Lotus and Sunset Room and all the other places that we used to go at that time in Triangle Square. And with that, that's like a property that's been investor owned. Renters don't take care of it. It doesn't look good for its age. It looks rough. It needs some TLC, some true TLC. Okay. When you get to a C6, that's a property that you're probably more than likely Celeste is not going to be able to do financing on. That's where you're going to call your hard money guys, your private money guys. And for those folks that are on this call too, if you ever like Iron Oak home loans, I do a lot of business with. It's not necessarily a plug for them, but I realized this during one of my speeches. I'm like, let's imagine, folks, that you get that fixer, right? The one that you're like, you have to plug your nose when you go in. It looks like a hot mess. Imagine that you were able to call someone to get that property sold within a couple of days, all cash. And I was like, why aren't agents calling and having hard money guys on dial? So like Iron Oak Home Loans, Christy Mathers and Rich Mendoza, they're based out of the Bay, but they do a lot of stuff down in LA with our office down there. They have investors in a pool that have money. They have money to give. So next time you guys have a property that's a fixer, instead of trying to figure out how we're going to market that property and what we should do it, call up your hard money guys. Hey, do you have any investors that are looking for properties right now? I've got a property in Santa Ana right now, or LA right now, or Pasadena, or whatever. It's rough. We're looking at offers, right? So C1 brand new, C2 renovated, C3 average, C4 looks good for its age, C5 doesn't look good for its age, C6 call hard money. The reason I want you guys to know this is, let's say Celeste calls me and she's like, "Hey, Anthony, I got one of my clients. They're getting a divorce. I want you to come do the appraisal. They live on 123 Main Street." Okay, cool. Yes, got it. My office pings me. They're like, "Hey, Anthony, we just did one on 122 Main Street last week. Do you folks think they were going to type the entire report over?" No, right? We're, especially if it's the same size property, we've already done the market analysis. We've already done the adjustments. We've already done the things. So we're just going to clone it. Now, here's the problem with that. We are all human. And let's just say my daughter, you know, was sick. I was up all night. As those who follow me on social media know, I'm already up at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. So if something messes up my nap, I'm human. Let's say I clone that report, and Celeste property, her client, is a C2 renovated property. The property I did last week was a C4. It looks good for its age, but not renovated. And I forget to change the condition rating. And then I go and attach my value to a dated property. Do you see how Celeste might be like, "Anthony, you're pretty cool. Thank you for joining me on the webinar and stuff, but you're all show and no. Like, you don't know what you're doing when it comes to valuation." And that's what happens all the time, where agents do not know where to find the condition rating on a report, do not know the definition of it. And it's black and white now. There's no guessing. Okay. And an appraiser just used the template, everything C3. It's like, wait, hold on. No. So I want you guys to know where to look for that. Okay. And that again applies to how you do your CMAs a little bit better. Here's a quick hack. Everybody thinks their kid is the cutest, right? Every seller thinks that their house should sell the highest. What I do on my consults is I will print off the MLS photos for the comparables in color, and I'll put them on the table. Hey, you know, okay, so we've got the properties. These are the best comparables, the most recent ones in the neighborhood. Which property do you think looks more the most like your property? Because folks, who wants to go and tell somebody their kid is ugly? I'm not, but they get to pick out and say, "Oh, yeah." I mean, they're not going to pick out the one that has, you know, all the pull out drawers and the handles and the, you know, 36-inch range. Okay. So I do that. That's a trick that I do where, again, it takes me telling them that, hey, your properties, because you have some people who are a little distorted in the way they view things, and they don't understand, like, nobody else in the neighborhood has boxes stacked to the ceiling that you can barely fit through the entire house. Okay. Now, here's a key thing, real estate agents, and I want everybody to kind of lean in on this, because this is a skill that A lot of appraisers, there's a lot of phenomenal appraisers. Don't get me wrong. There's guys that I respect, beautiful minds. They see it, they get it, they understand it, they develop their skill. And there's a lot of guys who just rubber stamp adjustments. And there's a lot of agents that don't understand how to come up with the adjustment. The adjustment we're talking about right here is called the condition adjustment. Okay. And I want you guys to get away from saying, I feel like I feel. Who cares about your feelings? Feelings are for relationships. They don't pay us to guess, they pay us to get it right. And when things are on the line, folks, we need to know what we're doing. And so this is a technique right here that anybody on this call can do. And you guys got to just keep a file, whether that's a company file that's in your office, whether it's between you and a couple agents. But every single time one of those fixer properties come up on the market, okay, it's, you know, a C5, a C6, write that address down in an Excel or whatever and track that property. Whether you just put it in your tickler file to check back in 6 months, did the property sell again? Because the separation between what the property was when it was a C5, C6 and what the property sold for when it was completely renovated. Now, granted, you've got a time index, right? We've got to bring the dated when it's sold as a fixer. You have to still time adjust it as if it's today or when it's sold, when it resold. The difference between what it sold for originally and where it sells for today when it's renovated, that's your condition adjustment. And it's on a percentage basis. It's not a dollar. And the thing is percentages typically run consistent through time. Okay. So you can sit there and keep this data for a year, 2 years, 3 years. And what you'll start to find is while you have some that, you know, are a little bit, the spread is high, like it's a 40%, you know, split between the fixer and the fabulous. And the other ones are like 20% or 15. You'll find this cluster in the middle and you're like, whoa. Like there was a cluster I was studying, I think it was Santa Clara County, I remember which county, but it was like, because I have an AI prompt now that I put in that finds all the properties for me, finds the duplicates and does all the stuff in like seconds. But what I found is that there's a cluster and I'm like, whoa, we have 13 different properties that all average around 38%, or it was 38, was 31% spread. How do you use this? Well, one, if you're dealing with somebody who wants to say, hey, should I remodel the house before we sell? Well, you can say, okay, well, if we're going to put $100,000 in and the return, you know, after we've renovated is a 30% return, yeah, we're net positive. But also when you guys are reviewing appraisals or you're prepping for an appraisal, you can show the appraiser the pairing. This is what we call pairings when we have these two properties like this. It's the same property, but they're both sells. It's called a pairing. You can show the appraiser, hey, you know what? In this neighborhood, it's a 30% spread ROI on going from fixer. So yes, it's a perfect comp that's sold down the street on the same street. It's inferior than us. You have, as you know, I would say, as you know, because I want to act like they already know. Okay. As you know, there's a 30% return on renovations in the area. Oh, how did you come up with that number? Oh, here's the Excel sheet with the different pairings. So I challenge you guys to do that in your office, start collecting that information because that is consistent. So now we can see that this is basically a $200,000 spread. Okay. Now, folks, I want you guys, I don't know if, you know, typically we're live. I ask you guys what the condition rating of this is. And I can't see my chat. So I'm just going to kind of skip past that part. But this would be, we're going to compare a couple of the properties. So let's act as if the CMA that we're doing is for a C3 property, which is an average property. This comp number one, we would say it's average overall. It's not brand new. It's not completely renovated. It looks good, but we can tell a couple things like, you know, this is not modern the way that this is kind of laid out. We can tell by the shower, hey, looks good, has a little niche, all the things. But at the same time, we know that the modern ones actually take into account of how big the Costco bottle of shampoo is. So the niche is a little bit higher. So we can tell it's a remodel, but it's an older remodel. Okay. Then we get to this one, another comp. This would be considered a C4. Okay. We got the older tops. Yeah, they put some new flooring in. That's cool. But we can tell the size of the baseboards tell us it's a little bit older too. We can see in here, it's an older vanity, older lights, all the things. We did not do any drywall in here. We can see popcorn ceilings back there, right? So C4 looks good for its age. Now, when we get here, we have both of these properties. And when you actually walk through, this is how I do this on paper in front of the client so they can see, hey, two comps, amazing comps, Capistrano and Adante. That one sold for 1.390. This one sold for 1.320. The market has shifted. And then remember, and this is a key thing, please write this down. This is key, especially if you're going to speak to an appraiser. The time adjustments are from the pending date, not the sales date. Okay. Because the length of escrows can be different. And if you have a neighborhood or an area that's jumping at a rate of 2% per month, which a lot of our California markets can do easily, we want to go from the pending date, which is considered the meeting of the minds. That's when that property left the market. So we can say here, yes, client, that property is over 1.390. The market has shifted 16.6%. So we're going to add that to the comp. It's a C3 rated just like us. So we're not going to make any adjustment there. Now, 40698 Dante, it sold for 1.320. Okay. It is we have to add almost 16%, 15.73% straight line. So if it's over 1.30, we said we add 15.73%. It's a C4. Remember in the last page we saw it was a $200,000 spread between C2 and C4. So between C2 and C3, we're going to estimate that it's $100,000. Okay. Now, earlier we said, and we all agreed, even though you guys didn't get the feedback, talking to enough agents, I realized we deal with a lot in averages. We said we should have marketed this property at 1.30 to 1.390. Can we see how we got that significantly wrong here? Because the indicated value after you do the market change, because this is Fremont, California. So we had a NVIDIA boom and a bunch of stuff happened with the tech stuff. So Fremont is right there by the bridge that goes over to Facebook and all the other places. So that money spills over the bridge and they've just got ridiculous money that they're spending on some of these interesting properties, right? But we can see that it would sell for around 1.625. Okay. Does anybody have any questions on that? You guys can see how once you do the time adjustment and the condition adjustment, how it changes. So you can be the agent that can say, oh, you surprise them with, and say, oh, some feedback there. Oh, you're there. Okay. Do we have any questions on that part at all? And no, yes, maybe. Oops, I can't see your rolls on here. Okay. So we can see there how, again, the CMA is misleading without making the time adjustment. Now, the time adjustment, there's a couple different ways. I'll actually try to jump online, but homes.com. Okay. If you guys want a quick hack, can I give you guys an easy way to do this? If you want me to do it easy way or show you the hard way? Easy way? Okay. Easy button. I've never done that in a speech. Easy button. That's kind of funny. Okay. So easy button, go to homes.com, put in the address there. Now, realtor.com has like 3 or 4 AVMs, automated valuation models. Okay. We never trust Zillow. Not knocking Zillow, not knocking the 800-pound gorilla. What I am saying is, one, I tell clients, what about Zillow? It's like, well, if it's free, you're the product. Second of all, Zillow's not a valuation company. They're a lead generation company. Third, in areas that Zillow can't value off-market properties. And if we've ever noticed, Zillow will change the Zestimate to match whatever is listed in the neighborhood. Because why would they shoot their referral partner in the foot by having a Zestimate that's lower? So we don't trust them. We put them over to the side when it comes to value. Okay. Realtor.com and homes.com. They both have about 4 different AVMs. I like homes.com because when you put it in there, it gives you the 4 different AVMs like CoreLodge, a couple other guys, Quant or whoever. And then it gives you an orange line that tells you the average between all 3 or 4 AVMs. Now, how you use that, while the AVMs, obviously the property, unless it's an outlier special and all this other stuff, the value is going to run somewhere in that range. Okay. But that orange line, you can run your cursor across it and just easily you can say, okay, well, I have my first comp sold 4 months ago. Okay. 4 months ago, that was December. Oh, the median price or the average price in this model is 1 million. Oh, okay. Well, today it's 1.1. Perfect. I have to add 10% to that comp to show as if it's sold today. So that's a quick hack. I show in my courses how to do it down. Like I can run regression and figure out the dollar adjustment down to the day. I can tell my client, hey, the market's moving at a rate of $200 a day. So if we're going to have a 30-day escrow, you want to, or 30 days before we get to appraisal, you want to buy here. And this is what your X is going to be, so on and so forth. But if you guys just want something quick to look at and say, oh, okay, these comps sold three months ago, the market shifted this way, adjust it. Okay. So on there. Now let's go. Oops. I'm going to go back to just chatting with you guys. See, how do I record it? How do I get off of my screen share? Anybody know how? Let's see here.
I'll have to get out of it.
Okay, can you guys see me now still?
Yeah,
No,
we can still
Or
see.
is it me or
no.
am I sharing my screen still? Oops.
You're still sharing your screen.
Okay, stop share.
There you go.
Perfect. Are we there? Okay.
I have a question, Anthony,
Yes.
real quick on the lending side, because I see that when appraisals are done, the adjustments that are made based on like square footage or room count, any of the adjustments,
Uh-huh.
it's not like one, like let's say one bedroom is a $10,000 adjustment.
Uh-huh.
It's not like that, right? It's not like a fixed number for a particular condition. Like it's every appraiser can adjust it differently, correct?
No. So yes and no. Every appraiser is doing it differently, and it's grossly different when they're not supporting their adjustments, not making market evidence based adjustments. And that's why I put out the adjustments course. And so that's
Right.
where I show you guys how to do data visualization. Show you guys how to use AI to adjust. I show you guys how to use regression. Okay. And I simplify it, especially with the AI. It's plug and play. Your gate of entry is being able to export things out of your MLS. And that's where I want everybody to be able to challenge those, because I'll have guys where it's like, we're in a neighborhood where again, I don't like the price per square foot thing, but I'm just going to just say it as a example. We're in a neighborhood where the price per square foot is $1,500, and you got a guy using a template adjustment of $150 a foot for a house that's 500 square feet smaller. Like, where can you get a house 500 square feet for that fit, the $150 a foot? And that's where I want you guys to look at. Now, a quick hack. This is not the right way to do it. That is my disclosure, but it is a way for you just to quickly test. Okay. And that is the GLA adjustment less than 33% of the average price per square foot between the comps? Okay. And that's what we see in a lot of situations. It's more or a little bit less. But again, if the price per square foot, because here we go, let me jump into this. Price per square foot encompasses a bunch of different things. You guys can actually use this in your client conversations. Okay. In price per square foot, people say, oh, price per square foot is X. I'm like, okay, cool. That's great in a conversation. But measuring everything on price per square foot is like, measuring a burrito by its length. What if it's all rice? Okay. We got to think of that price per square foot as how I explain it. Let's say, Mrs. Customer, the price per square foot is $1,000. Well, out of that $1,000, the building size change might only contribute $300 a foot. The lot size might be $17 a foot. Condition might require for 12% of that thing. There's so many things in there. Plus, price per square foot, you've got economies of scale. And this is something I want all the agents to remember again in your pricing conversations. Economies of scale. What that means is, like, I had an agent that showed up to an appraisal that we're appraising a 3,000 square foot house. And she brought in, she's like, oh, value shouldn't be an issue. Price per square foot is X. And, these are the comparables. And she gave me comparables that were all around 2,000 square feet. I'm appraising a 3,000 square foot house. First of all, those aren't comparables. A 3,000 square foot buyer is not buying a 2,000 square foot house, and a 2,000 square foot buyer can't afford the 3,000 square foot house, or they buy it. More importantly, economies of scale. The smaller the house, the higher the price per square foot. The bigger the house, the lower the price per square foot. Okay. So if you're going to use price per square foot, make sure it's controlled. Okay. And I'm actually going to show you something, a couple different things. I'm going to try to share my screen one more time. I'm going to be professional at sharing my screen in a minute. Let's see here. Share and dun, da, da, da. Can you guys see? What do you guys see right here? Okay, perfect. Do you guys see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is what I was talking about on homes.com. Okay. This orange line. So let's just say I had a comp, like the best comp in the neighborhood sold in 2021. I can run my cursor right here. We can see that the average price in December of 2020 was $1,056,000. Okay. And then today it's 1.418. So we have to convert that to a percentage for those. So let's just go for those who aren't good with percentages. You can just say percentage change calculator. Okay. And then we'll sit here and say, and just for example, we'll say the price was 1,056,000 back in 2020, and today is 1.57. Okay. We calculate that. That means if that perfect comp that's sold in the neighborhood 4 or 5 years, or whatever the number was, we have to add 37.97, basically 38% to that comparable. Okay. So that is the quick way you do it with this. Now, there's a more sophisticated way that is still simple because I show you guys how to do it using AI in my course. But this, if you guys just want a quick hack, just use that. Okay. It's not going to be precise, but it's 150 times better than just throwing the spaghetti at the wall. Okay. The other thing on realtor.com, let's see here. Let's just pull up property here. Altadena. Okay. So let's see if we pull this up. And this is how you get to the pricing heat map that I talked to you guys about earlier. And are we good on time? We're over here. I'm sorry. Are we okay for time for a couple more minutes, folks?
We're good.
Yes.
Okay. So here, if you go to realtor.com, this is another hack. Now, again, we knew this almost a quarter century. And every single file, we start with the pricing heat map. I don't care what I know. I'm not subscribing to that. I want to study because we all agree that the neighborhood that we grew up 20 years ago is not the same as the neighborhood is today. So we always let the data talk to us. So here, realtor.com, you scroll all the way down, okay? And you see they have their AVMs. Homes.com did a better job, in my opinion. But here's the chart I was talking about, okay? Now, again, some of you, when you get on there, it's going to look just like that, okay? You have to go hit layers, and then you turn on estimate. And then now it's going to show you that. So again, we can see in this Altadena market, right? We know if my property is located here, that I can only take comparables from here, unless I make a location adjustment. We don't have time to go into that today, but I do show that in my courses of how we figure out what the percentage difference between this location and this location would be. But again, I challenge you to look at this, right? And look at this for every area. And this also, again, you take this and you print this off and you give it to your appraisal as a part of your appraisal packet. And I challenge you guys, just as a funny, okay, and I hope some of you guys message me when you do this. When you meet the appraiser, first of all, and we'll kind of close on this because I could literally go for another hour on some of these topics. When you're meeting an appraiser, don't just bring us MLS sheets. We already have that access, the same exact access. You're literally wasting your time and paper, okay? And in most cases, if you guys meet myself or one of my team members and give us just MLS sheets with no notes on them, my daughters will be doodling on them by 6 p.m. Expand the appraiser's mind with the information that we don't know. We are numbers. We aren't feelings, but you guys are in the houses. You guys can know when a property photos well, but it's cheap LVP flooring that they didn't glue and it's bubbling here and it's bubbling there, right? You know that, hey, in that property, they wouldn't take staging, or hey, that buyer, too often an agent will leave out a low comp instead of explaining it out, saying, yes, you're going to come up with this property. But the story behind this one is the daughter, the father and mother lived in Missouri now. The house was paid off. They went to sell the house. The daughter didn't want to. This is actually a true story. And so she barricaded herself in the house and was hiding in the crawl space in the attic. And so they literally had to sell that house with the problem. And that's why it sold low. Or explain that, this side of the neighborhood has foundation issues. This side is, it's like there's a part of Long Beach where you have like basically the front of the house is one school and the back of the house is another school. Explain those things and put notes on your MLS sheets. Expand the appraiser's mind. This also helps you in the 25th hour when there's issues. And you're not just talking about cutesy stuff about barbecue grills. You're talking about hard facts. This area is this. This area is this, right? You can use that in your rebuttal later. Okay. But make sure you put notes. And I challenge you guys for the funny, write the condition rating on the properties. C1, C2, C3. I guarantee no appraiser has ever seen an agent, unless they've been a part of my class, my workshops, write C4 or C2 or whatever rating on there. Okay. So I'm going to close on that because I want to respect your guys' time, but let's open up for any questions that we may have. Let's see here. I'm going to stop the share. Okay, let's open up for any questions we might have before we get off. And then I'm going to send also a recap of stuff over to Celeste after the call too.
Do you have any workshops or anything coming up soon?
We have a bunch. We don't have anything. Let me see here. I think you're my last online right now for a couple months, but I am considering. So if you guys are on my Instagram, I am considering doing a webinar series. I was trying to battle back and forth on like, do we just do a 4-hour sit down? Or do we just do this in bite sizes, like, hey, 1 hour on this topic, 1 hour on this topic, 1 hour on this topic? Because again, I want to change the industry at the national level and at scale. So I don't have anything scheduled right now. Everything else is in person. But if I do announce webinar series, I'll let you know.
Okay. Ray, you had a
Somebody,
question.
I did, but you just answered it. So if you have any classes coming up or anything, webinars coming up or anything like that, I would definitely love to jump on there. This was super informative information, especially because I am a listing agent and I want to make sure that I'm learning all the up-to-date things that you, Anthony, have talked about today. I found this one of the most valuable, informative webinars that I've been on today, and I want to thank you for your time. And thank you for really taking the time to teach us this because it's extremely important that we know these and we know these numbers. And so I'm super grateful for that. I just want to say thanks. And thanks, Celeste, for hosting this. I love you, girl. Mwah. Thank you so much.
yeah, no, thank you. And thank you for having me and spending some time with me. I will send Celeste, I will send you over a link. I do have, now you guys don't have to wait. And I do these webinars and things for free because I just want to change the game. Literally, I want to raise the level of awareness. But I feel like I'm at this point, I got to stop not telling you guys about my courses. So I do have full webinar, or not full video, step by step by step, where like I have the pricing and appraisal masterclass that we did. That's like 4 or 5 hours of 7-minute modules. That's literally all the things you guys didn't know that you didn't know about pricing. We have that. We have the adjustments course I just came out with that I talked about, where it literally is changing, it's leveling the field, but you guys have techniques that are superior than most appraisers in there that I teach you. And again, it's a step-by-step video. So it's basically a library. And then I have an executive summary in there. You're like, okay, how do I make a location adjustment? You don't have to listen to the whole class. You can just go to a part. It says location adjustment. Okay, do this, do this, do that. And then I have the branding. But to the point, Celeste, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you over a link that has a discount. Like all the classes are like $800, $900, whatever. I'll send it to you guys, and it'll be a link for like $148. Okay, for all my classes, because again, it's not about, I'm not trying to become a millionaire off of my courses. Okay, it's like I just want to change the game, and that's going to be my legacy. And so I'll send that to you guys. Feel free to share that with your colleagues. And even if you don't buy the course, you don't share with your colleagues, please do this. If you found anything valuable in this webinar today, if you learned anything, please, please, please share with as many people as you can, because there might be somebody in your office that their next deal is literally how they're going to pay their mortgage. Their credit cards are already racked up. It might not just be for you. It might be somebody that you can help that's running into a scenario, and an appraiser crapped the bet on their deal, or they're just, the stakes are on the line. They have, maybe a little bit of equity they might have bought in 2022, barely have enough to be able to sell that house to get out. Please, please, please share this with more people. Share this with your teams. If you guys have any scenarios, you don't have to buy a course. You don't have to come to a webinar. Send me a message on Instagram. If you have a scenario, I will help you. Sometimes it takes me a day or two. You got to tell me, hey, 911, our deal's about to go sideways, but I will respond. And it's me responding back. I used to have other people controlling my assistants, controlling my Instagram. It is me. When you message, I will message you back. Okay. So thank you so much for your time. And I hope you guys found it informative.
Thank you so much, Anthony. And thank you to everyone that showed up today. I'll reach out to you guys to see if you guys have any ideas for the next webinar. I would love to hear what you have to say. I know it's past our time, so I'll let you all go and get to work. And so thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Anthony, bye.
Bye-bye.